Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash, and double honor to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to those who elect you in the sword of truth and in sincerity. Okay, I'm the brother I will learn from the GMS West Palm Beach Camp, back with another lesson. And I just want to do something quick to this right here. A story that this guy made up, but nonetheless, it's just going to be the reality of a lot of people's lives real soon, because pretty much the point that I got out of this little story that he made up, whether it's made up or not, I'm not sure, but nonetheless, the fact is that it's going to be a reality soon here in America, where people's lives are well, I'm not even going to say soon. I'm going to say, like, some of this shit is happening right now where people getting laid off. Bills is unbearable. It just hasn't gotten to the point yet to where, people, are being evicted out of their homes, right? Where people, are not eating. It hasn't gotten to that point yet, but it's here. Like I said, job layoffs happen, and when you watch this little video, a brother has shared it. You know what I'm saying? So, throw out your shot for that brother sharing this video. But when you watch this video, you're gonna see how things was going perfect, pretty much. Perfect. The perfect life, everything just not a care in the world. Then at some point, the lives of the main people, just started going down. It just started changing, to the point where it ended with, death. You see, that's what's going to happen here in Babylon the Great, America, is that a lot of people who were living good lives, who was making good money at their job, they pretty much lost their jobs. And, once you lose your job, it has a trickle effect on the rest of your life, because the scripture says, if you don't work, you don't eat, So, if you ain't got a job, and you're not working, well, then you can't pay the electric bill, you can't pay the mortgage, you can't pay your rent, whatever it may be. You can't do certain things concerning to the living situation. So now, you don't got a job, so now you got to make a decision to whether eat or budget the bills. And it's going to end up to you budgeting the bills, cutting things off. But this story is particularly Salaki. This story is particularly heavy in the fact that, everything that the men of the Lord, beginning with the apostles and elders, have been saying, it's happening, and it's only going to get worse. But something like this, a guy puts out and people are watching it, listening to it. But our apostles been out there through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'Hashem Shah for years. The elders before them been out there for years, and nobody listened. That just go to show you how the men of the Lord is going to be more precious than fine gold. And that's the point that I wanted to get to. I wanted to get to how the men of the Lord are going to be more precious than fine gold. Because in a time of an apocalypse, as I was watching in that video, people are going at each other's necks. The neighbors were committing suicide. The resources were scarce. Just everything that can go bad, all right, when things go down in the society, But, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get the scripture. This is Jeremiah chapter 30 and verse 6. It says, "Ask ye now and see whether a man doth travail with child. Wherefore do I see every man with his hands on his loins, as a woman in travail, and all faces are turned into paleness." So pretty much, the men, that you thought, the people you thought were hard, strong men, so on and so forth, are going to be reduced, into When I say reduced into women, I mean they're going to be as women, right? Scared, don't know what to do, crying, pale because they're afraid. See, and that's what's going to make the men of the Lord as precious as fine gold, is that the men of the Lord, Yahweh Shema Shai, is going to be with his servants. So therefore, his servants are not going to suffer the famine. His servants are not going to suffer the different plagues that the rest of these people are going to suffer. You know, Yahweh Shema Shai is getting ready to judge the world, man. You know, and the judgment for America, Americans, Babylonians, is going to be, it's going to be a major, and there's really, the way the scriptures put it, that day is great. Jacob's trouble is great. Even the word great, what I'm saying? People, great is what describes Jacob's trouble, but great can't really show you what it's going to be like. You can only imagine what Jacob's trouble is going to be like, man. Right? Verse 7 says, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even a time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. Meaning who? The elect, beginning with the men of the Lord. They're going to be saved out of, the tribulation, so to speak. Not in the sense that they're not going to go through the tribulation, but the sense that, the judgments are not going to touch them as the rest of these people out here. It's a little willing, that made sense, because we don't teach. I'm not saying the elect is not going to go through the tribulation like the Christians do. I should have probably worded it different, but the elect is going to go through the tribulation, but as it is written, he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. He's going to save his elect out of the horrendous conditions that he's bringing upon the earth. All right. He's going to save his elect out of the horrible conditions coming upon the earth, man. So, Shalaki. Jacob's trouble is not going to be something to Shalaki, man. This fucking guy just cut me off. Jacob's trouble is not going to be something to play about. All right. And that little video right here, it pretty much showed you how life can change in an instant, man. How life could be good one moment, next thing you know, you seeing on the news that the stock market crashed, or a war has started. We know that wars lead to downfall of economy, downfall of the system. And in this case, in this sense, the elite, want the war to happen so that it'll lead to the downfall of, this current system, and that they could bring in their new one, which is the NWO. You see? Let's go to, as I quoted, let's go to Isaiah chapter 32. Isaiah 32 and verse 2. Oh no, this is not the one I quoted. It says, and a man shall be as an hiding place from the wind, and a covert from the tempest, as the rivers of water in a dry place, as the shadow of a great rock in a weary land. And this is talking about a man of the Lord. A man of the Lord is going to be a hiding place from the wind. The wind represents the destruction. Because while people out here going at each other's necks, guess what? The servants of Yahweh Shem Shai, as it is written in Isaiah 65, it says, my servants shall eat, my servants shall drink, but you shall mourn. So, at that point, you're gonna see people getting judged, people being put to death, people offing themselves, and you'd probably be like, you probably see people have pity, be like, damn, I feel bad for him or whatever. But really, in the time of Jacob's trouble, nobody going to be feeling bad for nobody, because the scripture says how the love of many shall wax cold. You see? The love of a lot of people is going to wax cold. You know, when you go into that wax cold in the etymology or the blue letter, you know, it goes into psycho. People are going to turn into psychos, man. You know, because, you know, the downfall of this society is gonna drive people mad. It's gonna mean that they gotta survive for themselves. Their family gotta survive. So that means they don't see nothing but, you know, red. Now, if they see you got food, they see you got, you know, beans, rice, chicken. You know, if there's any chicken in that time. But if they see you got resources, man, all right, they coming to you. You know, you coming to get visited. And that's why it would be best during the time of an apocalypse, you know, to keep your mouth shut, you know, and, you know, go around with uncookable food, for lack of better words, because you don't want nobody smelling that shit, you know. Then you, guess what? You get ambushed because they smell, you know, they smell beans and, you know, chicken or whatever cooking. Now you get ambushed, and now your family get took and they put you to death. You see, this is the reality of the things getting ready to happen in America, man. And it sounds far-fetched to a lot of people, you know, but we understand these are the things, you know, slated to happen. And you could believe it or not, but the fact of the matter is that it's getting ready to happen. Okay, let's go to Isaiah 13. In verse 12, it says, I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir. You see? So the Lord is going to make a man more precious than fine gold. You know, his servants, his men. You know, because in this society, you know, what's more, you know, value, so to speak, all right, is a man with guns, you know, the man with tattoos and stature. You know, if you 6'5", 6'6", people are gonna run to that person because they got no height or they're big or whatever. They got the muscle. You know, the Lord, you know, can give a brother that is like 4'9", you know, looks, you know, he looks like he's not, you know, on the stronger side or whatever. The Lord can give him super strength. Right? The Lord can have that brother, you know, go 5 inches. You know what I'm saying? Just like that. You know, but the power is going to be to the Lord, to where he gives spiritual power, and brothers are going to be out here doing miracles. Out here, you know, cleaning water, you know, creating food. You know, this was going to make the men of the Lord more precious than fine gold, is the fact that Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushua, is going to be with those men and give them spiritual power. You know, and these are the times of great miracles. And that's what that little story, that's what it made me think of. It made me think of the men of the Lord being more precious than fine gold, and how, you know, the Lord's going to give his servants spiritual power to get through these tough times. Yes, society is going to collapse, but, you know, that's nothing to those who are serving the Lord. Let me see if I can find it. John 12. I want to see John 12. Let me see. What was it? 12:16. Let me just chop it in. It says, greater works, the one who Yahweh Shah said, greater works shall he do. John 14, so I was in the chapter. I skipped it, Salaki. But it's John 14:12. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me, the works that I do, shall he do also, and greater works than these shall he do, because I go unto the Father. You know, so Yahushua did great miracles when he walked the earth. But now he went back to the Father. All right, now he's going to give spiritual gifts unto his brethren. You know, so in the time to come, when all hope seemed lost, you know, the Lord is going to show up. He's going to give spiritual power, right? And you're going to see brothers do greater works that Yahushua, was said to have done in the days that he walked. Because beginning with our apostles and elders, man, hey, we believe in the miracles. The Lord multiplied fish and bread. The Lord turned water into wine. Different things of that sort that he did, that the Lord said, you're going to do greater works. See? And this is what our faith is in. Let the scoffers mock. Let them scoff. The scripture says, for what if some did not believe? Shall their unbelief make the faith of the Most High without effect? God forbid. Them not believing is not going to change the fact that these things are getting ready to happen. They're just going to be on the left side of things, and they're going to go through the worst, So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I would like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakodash, and double honor to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the full lake, hearing this word in truth and in sincerity. Until next time, I say shalom.